everybody, and welcome to another episode of Prop Talk, the official podcast of the Property Masters Guild. I am your producer today, and for the next six-ish episodes, Mikey Trudell, and mixer, everything else, editor, whatever you want to do, because we are transitioning to a couple awesome prop masters who decided to help us out and step in so Chris Call and myself could take a little mental break for ourselves, which we all need sometimes in the prop master universe. But let me introduce you, your two new hosts for the next 6 episodes. We have Brad Elliott and Scott Buckwald.
Hey, Mikey.
How's it going, guys?
Good. Very well.
Yeah. Thanks for coming in.
It's fun to be here. It's fun to be here at this part of the microphone for a change.
Yeah, I'm very happy because you guys are the first two people I had in mind to do this, and both of you said yes, so that that made it a little bit easier.
What was I thinking is what's going through my head right now.
It
was exciting. The prop talk limo picked me up this morning at 8 o'clock. It was nice.
Oh, man.
I love that.
I was waiting for the chopper. It just never came.
Yeah.
I had to ride an Amazon delivery drone. But yeah, so everybody, please forgive myself and Scott for our stumbles. But I'm really excited to talk to Scott today. And we're just going to kind of chat with each other. We sat down already before the thing started, and we got through so much gold. So,
and yeah, we'll try to rehash as much of that as we can. Because what's the chance of a prop master telling the same story twice?
Fair point. I'm always interested, Scott, in origin stories, and I don't know yours at all. So can you just tell me, how'd you start in this business? Like, everybody has a unique story. There's no normal way to get in.
Mine was, I was inches from going to law school. I went undergrad for history, and I thought I was going to go to law school, and it literally was, I had gotten accepted to 2 law schools, and it was me looking at them going, nah, because all I'd ever want to do was work in film. And I had been in comedy groups in high school and college, and I didn't have anybody in my family or in my life who worked in film. So I lived in a life where you looked in the classifieds. I just didn't know how to get in. And a friend of mine, when I was going to school in Boston, was working as a PA, and he got me a PA job in Boston. Did one PA job in Boston.
What was the project?
It was working for WBZ News.
Okay.
It was just working as a in-studio PA. And doing TV news is definitely not the world I wanted to be in. But it was really exciting for me. Then I realized I needed to get out of Boston, so I moved to New York, where at the time there was just a lot of filming going on. And PA work in New York is very plentiful, or especially in the 1980s, but it is grueling. I don't know if you've ever worked much in the Northeast.
I really haven't.
But the winters are killer.
Yeah.
And I was the first prop work I was doing was a lot of really small jobs, because New York either has huge monster-sized shows that are union and I couldn't get in, or really small, low-budget things where you're paid $50 a day and you're kind of prop master, set decorator, a little bit of everything. So I was doing a lot of those, doing a lot of music videos. So by the time I moved to LA, I didn't sell myself as a PA anymore. And I went through the action kickboxing movies in the 90s. And one by one, films got a little better. It was a great time in the 90s in LA because the TV movie was still around, which don't really exist as much, where ABC had their Sunday night movie. And they were done like real movies would be done. They had notable cast, but they were very small and they were made for TV. Mm-hmm. So it really it brought me in on how to work on a professional level. And then I just started doing low budget features, and before you know it, you've been in the business, 35 plus years, looking back going, I cannot believe I'm not still a PA anymore.
Yeah.
How about you? How was
I was actually just passing through town. I had no intention of ever creating a life in Los Angeles. I had worked as the Fox 47 Kids Club host right out of college. So I was like a VJ for cartoons in the morning and in the afternoon. Okay. Right.
And where was this?
This was in Madison, Wisconsin.
Okay.
So I grew up in Milwaukee, went to college in Madison, really branched out.
So you know cold weather, though.
Oh, yeah. I'm no stranger to that, which is why I very much appreciate February in Los Angeles.
That's what brought me here, because in New York, I remember thinking, I cannot grow old in this business.
Yeah. Being
on street corners or rooftops where it's 10 below zero and snowing.
Yeah, and your fingers freeze to the lock on the truck.
Yeah.
So I did that for 3 years and then got really burnt out on that. It was just the same thing. It wasn't going anywhere. I was just out of school, and all of my friends had left town because normally you graduate from college and go somewhere else. And a very good friend of mine that I did a documentary on as like a senior thesis project. We did a documentary on a family living with HIV and AIDS. This is 1992. And he went off after school and started a summer camp for kids with HIV and AIDS, impacted by or infected with.
Okay.
And I was, being a goofball on TV, introducing cartoons and signing autographs at Madison Muskie's baseball games. Oh, it was a good time.
That's a blast. I would have loved to have done that.
I wanted to get out, and he said, "Come be a camp counselor." And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do that. So I gave up the keys to my office and said goodbye to Surfin' Sam. That was my name. And I did not pick it. And I joined this nomadic summer camp that was trying to figure out how to throw a summer camp and keep kids safe and healthy who were not always safe and healthy. And when that was done, we were here in Los Angeles. There were some producers that had some money but no know-how, and we had know-how but no money, and they sponsored us to do 3 weeks of camp in a beautiful site in Malibu. So when that was done, I was just kind of like, what's next? Yeah. Planning on going up to San Francisco with some friends that I'd made over the summer, until my mom had clipped an article out of the Milwaukee newspaper saying that they were going to start a new Muppet show up in Los Angeles. And I'm like, well, I'm here, and I love the Muppets. And ever since I was 12, I said I wanted to work on the Muppets. So,
and did you have any background in that kind of work? Was that something that even in your own kind of private geekdom you fostered?
Well, other than being a massive fan of the Muppets, I was a puppeteer since I was 6. Like,
Okay.
I was the kid who was always making things. And at one point, there was like this old tablecloth pad. You know those things that like your grandmother would put down on a table? Like it was like a foam pad.
Oh, sure.
Really thin.
Yeah.
I found one of those that my mom was like, yeah, you can cut that up. So I made a couple puppets, and I made a little out of cardboard, like a puppet stand to hide behind. And I just created a rabbit, what was it? The tortoise and the hare. Sorry. And so I'd been puppeteering forever. That one actually toured in the kindergartens and first grades of my elementary school. It was very exciting. So I really just decided I was going to go get a job on the Muppet Show, and I went in, found a phone number in a bookstore. It was like, back then we didn't really have the internet access. So
it was remember Samuel French books?
Yeah, right? And the 411.
Yep, in Studio City.
So I couldn't afford to buy the book, but I could afford to copy a phone number. And I made a phone call, and just by dumb luck got an interview. And was a PA on Muppets Tonight in 1995.
Wow.
And 3 months into it, I being a PA, you were there. Everybody who does it hates it. It was great to get exposure. And I found out that I really liked what was going on in the Muppet Workshop. That was cool. They're building the puppets. They're building the props. They're building the costumes. It's so creative.
One of my really early jobs in New York, I was a prop PA on the very first Ninja Turtle movie, which was all done through Henson Studios.
Yeah, that's shot in North Carolina?
The interiors shot in North Carolina. Then they came to New York City for several weeks to do exteriors.
To just shoot New York.
And it was just one or two of the turtles. I think Raphael and Leonardo. And then, what's the guy with the hockey stick?
I know that there's a guy named Shredder, and then there's...
It's their human friend.
There's the rat one. Yes. Is she the one in the yellow jumpsuit?
No, that was the news reporter. Anyway, so we shot that, but I remember one day I had to go to the Henson warehouse, and it was on the Upper East Side.
Yeah.
And we go in, it looked like the final scene from Raiders of the Lost Ark, because we go into this warehouse, and it's just endless miles, seemingly, of crates. And I remember walking through the crates, and it would say, like, Big Bird, 1969 to 1971, because they saved everything.
Yeah, they had an extensive archive. I don't know where that stuff is anymore, because I think the Henson family has gotten out of the New York workshop in that space.
Okay.
So,
But that would have been fall of '88,
Okay, that's a long time ago.
and that's just when I was starting.
Well, I loved what was going on in the Muppet Workshop so much that I would just, every time I wasn't making photocopies or getting coffee or doing the tape runs, which, you know what that is, I would just spend some time in there. And they realized that I could use my hands a little bit. And so I started helping out here and there. And then Fred Buckles, who ran the props for the puppets in the Muppet Workshop, because back then, the Muppets were very specialized, and they still are. So the Muppet Workshop does most everything that touches the puppets, if that makes sense. So he needed some help on a Saturday because they moved a scene up. It was John Goodman was the guest star, and he had sort of like this World War I trench vibe with the rats. And so the rats needed military gear. They needed rifles, they needed some binoculars, grenades, things like that to dress them up and make them look like, World War I rat soldiers.
But at to a scale to fit them.
Yeah, absolutely. So he called me up and he's like, well, I can't really pay you as a builder, but if you come in, I can get you an extra PA day. And would you like to try to build some of this stuff? Because we're just behind the eight ball.
It's so funny what you were just saying, the extra PA day.
Yeah.
I haven't heard that term.
It was brilliant.
But it's great because it was such a carrot. It's like, when you're making $50 or $125 a day, all of a sudden an extra PA day.
Yeah, an extra $100. Are you kidding? That's amazing. So, I went in and I built some rifles for the rats. Maybe I think it was World War II actually. I built some M1 rifles that you could put a little non-gun little squib thing in the barrel.
How big
and
were
fire 'em.
How big were the rifles?
Oh, they were probably about maybe 7 inches long, something like that.
So you couldn't go and use something that was already made, like find like G.I. Joe rifles or some kind of action figure gun.
Nah, you would have been shopping all day and not come up with it.
Yeah.
And then still they wouldn't have been right because you couldn't shoot them.
You couldn't do anything with them.
It was more of, get a picture, take it to the photocopier, scale it up and scale it down until you find, cut them out and look at it next to the rat. And that's like, okay, Fred, do you like this scale? He's like, yeah, build those. And then I went over and found some wood, drew it out and just started carving. And I was quick. I don't know how, but I was fast. So I built 3 rifles that all had these little, you could shoot them once before reloading. And I think I built 3 grenades and a pair of binoculars just out of like found objects that were hanging around the shop. And so when they went on hiatus after that, I was invited to join the Muppet Workshop as a prop builder, which was just, what a moment. I was a PA for 3 months in this town, which probably will make some people mad.
I look back on my PA days with a lot of fondness. I had some great times. I did a lot of music videos. I was definitely at the beginning of like the Yo MTV Raps kind of era. And I really appreciate I was at the right age and the right time. I do remember how grueling it was. I found doing PA work sometimes less not as scary sometimes as doing low budget movies. Because when I was doing low budget movies, I remember working with people on the films who were in their 50s then. And I'm thinking, all right, I'm 27, 28 years old, but this guy is like, 58 years old and he's the DP or he's the prop master, and this is the best he could do after a lifetime in the film business. And it scared me and it gave me a lot of anxiety.
Yeah.
Thinking, I don't want to be doing this 30 years from now, and this is the best I could do.
Sure.
And I just didn't have enough understanding of the business to realize there was a reason why those people were there.
Yeah, the cream always kind of rises to the top, doesn't it? I was really worried when I got here to town because this is such a big pond and there's got to be so many amazingly talented people here. And who the hell am I to
the thing
presume?
that also caused me a lot of anxiety, because like I said, I didn't have family who had ever done this. So I would be on a show, whether it was a music video where I worked on it for 2 weeks, or when I was in New York, I had PA'd on some huge movies and I might be working on it for 4 or 5 months. But the day I got off, it was always the call from my father going, what are you going to do now?
Yeah.
And, my father had worked for IBM. So, he filled out one application and he worked there until he retired.
Yeah.
And this was not the world they understood.
Yeah,
And
the gig side of this is, I think it was a lot more attractive and interesting when I was, in my 20s, because it's like, who cares? And, back then you could put together enough to live on if you got 7 months of work out of a year.
And that's what pretty much saved me. And that when I work with PAs now and they ask me, how I survive that. That's always my advice to them. Just save money, enjoy it now, and it turns into something.
Yeah.
You can't really have a master plan. You can't say, I'm only going to PA for 2 months or 2 years. You PA as long as you PA and just look for opportunity and you find your way.
Yeah, I think the time that you end your film or television career is the day that you decide you're done.
Right.
And right now, especially in Los Angeles, it's tough. There's not a lot of work out there, and it's going to be one of those moments of attrition where the people who hang in, and hopefully we're all optimistic that things will rebound, especially out here and in the United States in general, that it'll come back, and the folks that stayed will be the ones that get the jobs.
I see what's going to happen, I feel, is that it's not going to rebound to where it's going to be the way it was 10 years from now. I think the people who have stayed, whether they've been able to save up enough money and they could weather the storm, I think what will happen is the proportions will realign. So if there's 80% of prop masters doing 100% of the jobs, the 100% of the jobs might have gone from, say, 200 shows to now 50 shows.
Yeah.
So those of us who've been able to stay will just have less competition. And I see a lot of people kind of in our age group are taking early retirement. They just, they've just had it.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that I've always really counted myself very lucky, I love doing this. The hosting as much as anything prop related. I've always had fun doing this. And even on my last show, as long as I've been doing it, there are times where I think, how could I have ever had any other kind of living? I mean, This is me getting to play with my friends with little plastic army men and matchbox cars in the woods, and I found a way of making a career out of it.
Have you ever wanted to do a non-prop master job in the industry? Like, were you looking at DP or decorator or production designer?
A little bit. I mean, at the beginning, when I didn't know what it was, I actually kind of went into the film business like summer camp, where I just wanted to get into the film business. And then once I was there, it was looking at different activities. I had done a Madonna movie, one of my very, very first jobs, and I got hired as a parking PA, which is a very unique New York position where you literally just stand in a parking lot. And then I became friends with the effects crew, and they hired me. And they were able to, I was doing snow with them, and I really enjoyed that. I've always been good at tinkering and building and being mechanical, so I took to that. Then as I started doing more music videos, which, like I said, were very abundant in New York, my talents started going towards props because I've always been a collector. And I've always been good at, I was always the kid who made the plastic model as good as the one on the box.
Yeah.
So
What were you making models of?
Always.
I'm all about a tangent.
Mine was always World War II airplanes and
me
to
too.
a lesser degree ships.
Okay.
But I have a love for World War II aviation to this day.
I'm the same. I just got back from New Orleans last night, and one of the high points of the trip was the World War II museum.
Their museum.
Where they've got just a staggering amount of real planes hanging overhead.
I shot there for almost a year. I was doing Queen of the South.
Oh, wow.
In New Orleans, and we did the World War II museum. Have you been to the Chino Air Museum in L.A.?
I haven't, as a matter of fact.
The best in the country.
I'm looking. Well, I'll write it down.
What makes it great is not just the amount of planes they have, but almost all of them fly.
Yeah, that's
so
awesome.
It's not like going to the Smithsonian where you're just seeing a bunch of planes hanging from the ceiling, or like what they had.
No, they fly them.
They're flying them.
There's a few. So I moved from Los Feliz to Northridge, which is
I'm in Woodland Hills.
Who don't know, it's very North Valley, and sort of the north edge of the valley, and one of the real treats that I was
I know what you're going to say
was that they have a bunch of, right at the Van Nuys Airport out there, they have a bunch of T6 Texans, which
and they're always flying in formation.
And they fly them in formation, and
they fly over our house all the time.
Sound that just those engines just made a noise.
See, now that was something growing up in New York, because the weather is so harsh, I never saw World War II planes flying.
Yeah.
And now living in LA, and I have not grown tired of it. I love being in my backyard and hearing a roar.
Yeah.
And I see I've seen B-17s fly over my house. I've seen the Texans many times.
Yeah.
And I love that.
So now that we're on this tangent, I'm going to dig even further into it and tell you a quick story about going back to my Surf and Sam days at Fox 47 in Madison, Wisconsin. One of the last things I did was I was given an opportunity to, because I did a lot of my own camera work. I was kind of my own producer, director. I would normally have somebody come with me, obviously, because you can't do it all by yourself. But I was given an opportunity to fly.
Are there tapes of this on YouTube?
There aren't, but I do have, I think, some DVD transfers I've done, so I could figure out how to upload it at some point. I have an aerobics video too. That's another tangent. But I had an opportunity to ride on a B-24J Liberator.
I've flown in one.
From Minneapolis to Madison, and that was one of the coolest experiences.
I had a very similar experience. I was doing a TV movie of the week with Perry King, and we were shooting at a maintenance yard outside of El Paso, Texas, I believe. No, I'm sorry, Phoenix, Arizona. And the owner of this maintenance yard had his own private museum of World War II airplanes. And one day he overheard me talking to one of our other actors about a plane. His father had flown a Kingfisher, the rescue plane.
Yeah.
And he had one there, and I'm explaining it to him, and we're talking, and he really liked it. So he started asking me, like on the weekends, would I mind coming in and giving private tours?
Oh,
and
that's awesome.
Oh, yeah, I would love it. So it's a Sunday morning, probably 5 a.m. I get a phone call from the guy, and he goes, hey, I'm taking the B-17 up for some test flights. Do you want to go? And I'm like, are you kidding me? He goes, only thing is we're going to be just testing out all the engines. He goes, it's perfectly safe, but you might be up there for a couple hours because we want to just run a bunch of tests. I'm like, I will stay up there all day.
All day.
So I get on the plane. Perry King was there. And I remember the first thing that impressed me was, as much as this plane was 60, 70 years old, however old it was at the time, the moment those engines started up, you could tell it was a war machine.
Yeah.
It was just nothing but pure power.
They just sound angry.
And we were flying. The only place they wouldn't let me go was I couldn't go into the ball turret.
Right.
But otherwise, I had the roam of the plane.
Yeah. And then there's that right up front where the front landing gear comes down in the B-24. They said, listen, it's the doors for the landing gear are painted red. If you put 35 pounds of pressure on those doors, they open.
They open.
So definitely crawl if you want to get up into the nose. And, of course, you want to get up into the nose. So it was a little nerve-wracking on that part. But
for many years, I was a member of the Collins Foundation, which fly airplanes. And through them, I've been, and you could buy your way onto rides. I've flown I've flown the B-17 twice, a B-24, and then I took a ride in a B-25.
Oh, that's amazing.
Which we flew out of Burbank.
Yeah.
And then they fly over the Hollywood sign out over Malibu, and then they land back in Burbank Airport.
We should start a whole separate podcast just on World War II aviation. Yeah. I think we do really well. I think Mikey's happy that I'm trying to bring it back around too.
It's a different type of prop talk.
Really, very different prop talk. It's buddy bonding on prop talk today.
But the thing is that my first time flying in a B-17 happened on a movie set, and which is a good segue for me because one of the things I love about doing this is I have been put into environments that most people would never be put into unless you're. I worked in a maximum security prison for 6 weeks in Utah. And we worked on A Block. So I've done so many things over the course of my career that it's not the same as just taking a private tour. It's you really
we get the inside track on a lot of weird stuff that a lot of people don't get to do.
And I always felt that I could sit at any hotel bar, and as long as the person is not actually that, I can convince people I'm a doctor. I can convince people I'm an attorney, that I've been in the police force, that I've been in the military. Because especially most of those people, what they're thinking of as a doctor, they've learned on TV. So I've learned doctor speak. I know enough equipment, I mean, I could never fool a real doctor, but it's so many other careers. I mean, I've been an action figure my whole life. It's like I put on the suit. And one thing I had spoken with an actor, and he really liked this approach that I take, I always put myself into that position. Because I think what's unique about a prop master is we do need to get into that character. When I've worked on a show, and I think I've brought this up here in the past, when I work on a show where, let's say, most of the cast are high school students, if I have to get a backpack for a 17-year-old girl, it can't be the backpack that I, as a middle-aged man, would like for myself. I do have to become that 17-year-old girl, and whether it's through research or watching what kids... And I try not to use other TV shows as a source of my research.
Right.
So it is that. I do have to become that part. And I think that's very important for a prop master to really understand who the actors are, because in a way, we are acting in the show.
Yeah, and it really does help to have an understanding of what you're doing.
Sure.
I had a really great moment on Avatar Fire and Ash. I think it was Fire and Ash, not Way of Water. But spoiler here, Jake gets hit in the leg with an arrow. And the script had him, doing what you would do with an arrow, which is pushing it through, breaking off the point, the barbed point, and then pulling the arrow back out. And I was talking to, the director, Mr. James Cameron, and saying like, yeah, but won't he bleed out in like the next 10 minutes? Like this is a big wound. This is a big
James
hole.
shot you with a bow and arrow.
Well, yeah, he wanted to test it. No,
Fair enough.
But I was able to say, what if he does something like he pushes the arrow all the way in, and we're going to create one with a bunch of gnarly fletchings on it, and he packs the wound with the shaft of the arrow and the fletchings, and then breaks off the rest of the shaft, and then plays the rest of that scene or series of scenes
with the piece
with it still in, which would allow him to not really bleed too much,
right?
And
it's it's a great take on doing that.
I'd never seen it before, and all of a sudden, as soon as the words came out of my mouth, I'm like, "Shut up, Brad! That's James Cameron," But he looked at me and he was like, "Yeah, you know what? You're right. Let's try that." So it was really cool to have that collaboration, but that only comes from the knowledge that we all have to bring it back to your point, of everything. We have to basically know the encyclopedia or be able to get to that knowledge fast.
I think being able to understand the research and be able to confidently portray it, because, and not to, with grips and electrics, their job is, I don't want to say the same every show, but it's using the same tools. It's the same principle that goes into it.
Yeah, they have a mastery of 300 maybe pieces of equipment,
right,
overall.
Sure. And the show Jared Flurry and I just did in New Mexico was a present day Western. And there's just, a lot of things that I've never had to deal with before. And we took to them, and it was interesting. I like, for me as an individual, that every job gives me the chance of the possibility of approaching things that I've never had to deal with before. And I love that.
Yeah. And you have to be a quick student.
Sure. Yeah, very quick student. That's a good way to put it.
But thankfully, research, especially with the internet now, becomes a lot easier.
There was somebody had just put up the question on one of the Facebook prop master groups about how they used to research. And I remember I'd responded with, in my prop trailer, I used to have maybe a dozen yellow page phone books. And I would have phone books from every major city. Mm-hmm. And this is all pre-internet, pre-Amazon, pre-eBay. Because when I needed something, if I couldn't find it through a quick search of LA stores, I knew hitting major cities was the way to look.
Yeah, that's smart. I
remember having a typewriter on my truck. I remember Letraset letters. Mm-hmm. I had and I still have a bunch of books just because I'm very nostalgic for it, but just a lot of books about different decades, a lot of just ready research.
Yeah, the Sears catalogs used to be really good.
I have a bunch of Sears catalogs.
And Warner Brothers used to have this incredible research department. I don't think it's there anymore.
My favorite research department has always been the private library at History for Hire.
Yes, Pam and Jim put together a really genius space.
Unbelievable.
And I've used that. Shout out to them. I've used that more than once.
I did the first season of Mad Men, and I lived there. Yeah. Because first season of Mad Men was back around 2001. Mm-hmm. So the internet was just starting. It was okay. I mean, I did eBay. There was no Amazon yet. But to me, the best sources was looking at Playboy magazine from 1960, because it always would have articles on the best hi-fi equipment, what a well-dressed bar should look like. Looking through Life magazine was great for the ads.
Sure.
I had to reproduce a cheesecake box, and no one collects that, so it was hard to find an original package. It was a Sara Lee cheesecake box. Mm-hmm. But by looking through enough Life magazines, I saw it in enough ads, I caught enough angles of it so that I was able to reproduce it in Photoshop.
Oh, that's great.
And rebuild the packaging.
And great that you cared enough to get it right, too. Because that's one of those things where it's like, who's going to know if it's not quite perfect?
Yeah,
and I guess the answer to that question is you will.
Right. I think being obsessive-compulsive my whole life, I found a good career.
Yeah.
For that.
So if not props, maybe special effects, but you're a prop master.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I gravitated towards it. There was a certain honor among thieves I always liked. And even to this day, I couldn't imagine doing anything else.
I think I probably would have made a good special effects person, but I have to say, now at this point in my career, I'm just like I have the design bug.
Right.
I like to draw it. I like to come up with it. I like to figure out what would this be.
Sure.
And it's a real gift to be able to work on projects where you need to start with a blank piece of paper and figure out, what is that knife going to look like, or what is that space gun going to look like,
Right.
or how are we going to stay in this design universe and move it forward if it's already been established, or if you're lucky enough to get something that hasn't been established, to really work with production designer, director, writers sometime to figure out what does this world look like?
It's interesting because listening to you, I think about so many other prop masters that I'd worked with when I was starting, or older guys who really were from an old school of, and these were guys who maybe in the late 80s, early 90s were in their 60s then. So it just seemed like back then it was far more of a trade than an art. And so many of those guys, they would go to the Warner Brothers prop house, they would take it off the shelf, and their job was just to bring it from there to here. And I find now, as we're looking to, we're going for the possible Emmy nominations and Oscar nominations, I've always seen myself now as more of a production designer of the prop department.
Yeah, and
I'm not a technician. I don't like to be considered I'm just not the guy who hangs out on the gate of the prop truck.
Yeah, we're not project managers. There's a lot of
Right.
art that we put into projects, and I think one of the reasons that I was so very excited that the Property Masters Guild Awards took off, and one of the things we've had 2 award shows. We
Right.
have a third one coming in September. One of the things that strikes me is that the people who generally win those awards, it seems, are the ones that showcase their design and manufacturing, that show off what they were able to create,
Right.
as opposed to what they're able to curate. And it's not to diminish that curation part when you're doing a history piece or whatever you have. There are tons of challenges there, and you're not just buying and finding. A lot of times, like with your cheesecake box, you have to manufacture from research.
Right.
And so, but I think that that's what our community seems to have been responding to over the last couple of years, and what generally seems to take home trophies.
I think when the public looks at what we do, when they see the cheesecake box, they never give a second thought to how much went into building a 1960 cheesecake box. They look at it and they just accept it.
It's invisible in a way.
It's totally invisible. And I think I find the only thing I ever do on set where there's a little amount of awe and a little bit of, they give me a little bit of creative space as I walk on set, is when I deal with weapons.
Yeah.
I think weapons are the one time we get a lot of respect on set, and people will hold up, an AD will hold up a shot for, an AD will hold up a shot for me.
Yeah.
And things will kind of be put a little more in my court. But if it's a coffee cup or I'm bringing food to the set, it's always, come on, props, waiting on props.
Yeah, if the DP needs 15 minutes, they get it without question.
Right.
And if we need 30 seconds to put some super glue on something, it's like, eye rolls and heavy sighs.
Exactly.
But I think that moving forward, awards and this wonderful Prop Culture magazine, we have some copies in front of us right now, are helping to elevate us in sort of the eyes of our peers outside of the world of props, and to remind people that we do creatively contribute, and getting the opportunity to join the Television Academy. Even
Have you signed up?
Oh yeah, first day.
First day with me. The moment I saw that, I got an email from Teresa.
Yeah.
And I hit that right away.
I just got another reminder email, and I wrote back like, hey, I already did this, lay off.
That was about 2 weeks ago now.
Well, the reminder email came through yesterday.
I got the reminder email.
The original was
because I'm still waiting to hear.
And I think it's great because we do design, and we do create character, and we do build culture, and we do elevate our material as much as we can through props. Not to call attention to stuff, like if your cheesecake box had a neon sign pointing at it, say, hey, look at how cool this is.
Right.
But if it's right, it helps build everything else. And I think, this is a tree we've planted, and I don't think you and I are going to sit under the shade of this tree, but I hope that people entering the industry now may someday join with the production designer and the decorator on the Oscar stage.
Right. I noticed on the Oscars this year when I believe Frankenstein won it for Best Production Design.
Yeah.
And you didn't hear anything or see anything from the prop master from that. And I know we featured it in prop culture, but you look at the work that prop master did on that show. It's staggering, the amount of work and the amount of just technical know-how, and just no mention of it.
Yeah.
And I find it as insulting as I do frustrating.
Yeah, when what was it? Babylon won for Best Production Design a few years ago. I was so excited that they, in the acceptance speech, mentioned Chris Call,
right,
and called out, the contributions of Chris as contributing to the win of that award and to the look of the show.
It's a slow process, like you said. I don't know that we're going to sit under the shade of that too long.
You like that metaphor? Sit under the shade of the tree?
Yeah, no, it's great.
I didn't write it.
But it's perfect. It would be my high school yearbook quote now.
Yeah, there you go.
But it is something that I've been championing personally for the last 10 years, that I just feel the work we do is so vital to a film. And as much as I understand that, it was always frustrating just trying to get that to everybody else.
Yeah.
That even you go on most movie sets and you go up to some grips or camera people, you go, what does the prop department do? How many of them are going to say, oh, they set up video.
They got the chairs.
They do the chairs for Video Village.
And it's also, how many meetings do you have with a director and they're like, oh, you know what, we got to make sure we have something like this. And it's like, well, that's set dressing.
Right.
Or, well, that's actually costumes.
Right.
Or, I'll make sure the note gets to them. And then you have to worry about how many of those notes are for props that are going out in the set dressing meetings or but we work directly with the director.
Right.
Most of the time. We don't usually have a production designer over our shoulders because they're generally too busy. One.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have the benefit of the doubt and they trust you, they let you go because
right.
they need to. And so we're a very rare department in that we have those one-to-one interactions with the director and sometimes with producers. And it's I'm glad that we're finally starting to publicly recognize ourselves through Prop Culture Magazine and the award show, which is sort of outward facing celebration of our own excellence, if that makes sense.
No, very much. And the one thing I like doing, I find directors on TV are a lot different than feature directors, because a feature director is far more the showrunner. Mm-hmm. Where on TV, you have a showrunner and the director kind of comes in for the episode. And I find that my relationship with a TV director, they are very comfortable kind of putting themselves in my hands to do it right, because they realize I know the show. I've been there for more episodes, and they look towards me.
Yeah,
and that is a responsibility that I really like.
TV seems less a director's medium than film.
Correct.
Obviously, and it's really the showrunners are making a lot of the artistic decisions, and is that prop right for, does
right.
this look good? And directors, I'm not saying that they don't contribute. They're not just technicians placing cameras and yelling rolls and cuts. They're obviously really shaping their shows the way they want to, but
some more than others.
It's within a framework
right.
that already exists. So
right.
I just was lucky enough to get the 5th season of Abbott Elementary, but I have not done television for single camera half-hour comedy certainly for probably about a decade before that, and I am in awe of everybody that does a format like this, because it comes at you so fast and you've got to produce, and it's really impressive.
Whenever I've spoken with any prop masters who have done, because my resume is kind of equal features in TV, and over the last 10-15 years I've done far more TV because it's kept me in town. When my son was growing up, I didn't want to be out of town all the time. But I noticed there's definitely a snobbery about a feature prop master usually will get the job before a TV prop master. And I found it really the reverse was true. When I did a feature, I might have 8 weeks to prep. 8 weeks to prep 100 pages. So a lot of times by the time shooting began, a lot of the show was already prepped, and I was just along for the ride. TV, I have sometimes not even a week to prep 50 pages or 60 pages.
Yeah.
And as soon as that episode starts, I'm immediately prepping the next episode. So I never get a rest. I don't have nearly the amount of time in TV. And TV today is not TV from 20 years ago. A lot of the shows I've done felt like doing feature work.
Yeah, the expectations are very high in television. Not just for, hour-long dramas, but even for half-hour single camera, even for multicam sitcoms. There's a lot of expectations of very high quality and bringing the film sort of quality to those shows, which is way different than the days of Dick Van Dyke and I Love Lucy.
Well, the expectations were so low, and I think that's why a lot of the prop masters just kind of brought it from there to here, where today everything from business cards. I mean, I remember, and we've talked about this multiple times here, how business cards used to be something in the 90s where I would cut out a piece of paper, do some letraset letters on it, bring it to a photocopy place and make a bunch of cards. Now, and product labels, you would always see like Archie Bunker drinking a can of beer and it just said beer on it. The classic old time Earl Hayes labels. That stuff would never fly today.
No, it totally bumps now, doesn't it?
Right. Now a business card has to look like a real business card. Product labels, if it's a fictitious product, it can't look generic. It has to look like something where people would say, is this real?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
so when you're at Earl Hayes, or when you're at the corner store at ISS, or when you're looking, at HPR's graphics, all these really great long term, like these people have been around doing it a long time. Do you ever give them feedback? Because there's some of those products that are sometimes a little cringy, and it's just like, guys, this bottle just says vodka really big, and none of them do that.
Yeah, and I tend to use certain places less than others. Also, graphics are something I seized as soon as Photoshop and Illustrator came out.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of my own graphics.
More accessible now.
I find doing my own beer label very enjoyable. I'll buy, say, ISS beer labels if I need them for a stadium and not as much concentration is going to be given to them.
Yeah.
And I just need to get a bunch of beer labels. But if there's a hero label, and ISS and all of the places, you could find the one beer bottle that looks really great. I enjoy being able to look at the final product and say, I made that.
Yeah.
I love doing my own book covers and magazine covers. I've been doing newspapers for years. I personally just really enjoy that. Even if it's going to my truck on the weekends, that's playtime for me.
Gotcha. So this is something that comes up a lot, and I'd love to get your take on it, is where boundaries kind of cross a little bit, because are we supposed to do design work, or is that 800? And how much can we do? I don't think anybody's going to push back on us for a napkin sketch, but when you get into more final design work, is that something that's a no-no? Like building a beer bottle, for example.
I think what today's no-no might be our inroads into making us more valuable. I'm very much of the prop master who thinks we should not be doing chairs. I think it's beneath us. I think it should be craft service or PAs. But then you talk to a lot of prop masters and they'll always say, don't give up the work. Where my response to that is, I'm not looking to give up the work. I want to bring on more work, but I don't want to take on the work that is beneath us and doesn't have us looking good. So I would say give up the prop chair, but then take on doing the graphics on a cell phone, doing the graphics on a computer screen, doing laptops.
Yeah.
That I feel should be us. And sometimes it's a matter of kind of crossing the line a little bit to take it upon yourself to make it more acceptable, to where I talk to you now about doing my own beer labels, and there are other prop masters out there who are graphically capable, and they're going to be like, I would, and I do it because I enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I think that that's somehow how we take on that work. And for so many people, and I don't subscribe to when people say, well, a lot of times props is the gray area. Well, it's a way where it could come into our advantage, that if we're handling the beer bottle and the actor has to drink the beer and we have to fill the bottle and cap the bottle, why is it so unheard of to think, well, we designed the label for the bottle?
Yeah. Or we shepherd the design. I ran into, I had a big, beautiful run of big tentpole sci-fi things, and there was tons of design in that, and I'm hiring a lot of really capable designers for that, and they send you illustrations and drawings, and you take them upstream to the director, and you get some notes. And instead of going back to the illustrator and saying, okay, well, these are the notes, and standing over their shoulder and saying, well, I don't think that's quite what he meant. And sometimes, more often than not, especially when we get close to the final design, I'll take that into Photoshop or whatever.
Exactly.
Illustrator.
And take it around the corner.
And I'll push it the last bit, the last mile, by just fixing it quickly. And being able to turn that around for a director, and being able to show a revision on a design in half an hour or an hour.
And you're also able to
you're
also able to get something out of your own head that you might not be able to explain to somebody who, in all rights, might be a more accomplished graphic artist than you are, but I find my particular talents are more than enough to handle within the world of props.
Yeah.
And again, it is I don't want to give up the work. I want to get that slap on the back from the director going, oh my God, this bottle is exactly what I wanted, or I love the magazine cover. It also gives me the advantage of being able to turn things around quicker, as opposed to having to wait. I mean, you might have done some shows where you had your own kind of crew of designers. So you have a little bit more control over that.
Yeah, and I also feel a lot less guilty about doing some of my own drawing when I have, a team of illustrators that are in the proper union, that are doing the work, and I'm not really starting much from scratch. I'm sort of kicking it off, and then I'm tweaking it and fixing it. And I think that keeps you from getting grieved just about every day.
Yeah, and I think if people are, when you start looking at grievances and stuff, you have to really ask yourself, what am I being grieved about? I'm trying to make my position more in demand. I want someone to think when they hire me, I could get a lot of stuff done. So I think you do have to take it as a personal consideration when you're crossing the line. How far over the line are you going?
Yeah, and you don't want to displace other people's livelihoods. So that's where, if I have a team of illustrators already on, or one or two or whatever it is, I don't feel like I'm stepping over the line, because I've already got illustrators working, and there's enough to go around, and I'm just doing some tweaking. But also occasionally, if you're doing found object design, you just need to do that yourself. You can't take that to an illustrator.
There were on our last show, we had an amazing graphic artist, super cooperative, very friendly.
We can name names.
His first name was Steve.
Okay.
And we would work very closely together, and there were a lot of times where there was some graphic work that only needed work from, it was only going to be used for a prop. Mm-hmm. So he would work with the production designer, and like you said, he would get the initial thing done. And then I would get it, and I would realize there's certain things that just weren't happening. There was one gag where they needed to design a poster, so we needed it in several versions, from like the first lines on a page all the way to an almost finished project. And I was having the conversations with the director. So I said, look, could you do this? Send me the Photoshop files, and I'll rebuild it. I'll start from the beginning, and I'll print out the versions based on how the director wants it. And let me just work with your workable files. And that's what we did.
Yeah.
And everybody was so happy. He didn't have to sit there and come up with version 1, version 2, version 3. I did all of that.
Well, and I think, I don't know that we'll find too many property masters or people in the prop department that would say that the design work is the boring stuff. I think that's the meat. That's where
that's why I'm
really
here.
Enjoy things.
Exactly.
Is to put some art into projects, and to try to, because we generally will think about a prop more than anybody else on the set, and that's our job. The director hasn't thought it all the way through.
That's the cream that you're talking about.
Yeah, that's the best stuff.
Because there are a lot of prop masters. Again, even today, I'm sure there are people who just want to pick stuff up at ISS, buy it on Amazon, get it at Target, and just bring it to the set. Whether they possess that knowledge of being able to do it themselves, I don't know.
Well, and it's not to diminish that either, because you, with those choices, are still creating character, and you're still building, the look of a show. Whether you're drawing it and having a shop build it, or if you're making it on your truck, you're still making choices. So it's not as much fun for me personally to design through curation, I would call that, as opposed to just purely creative blank page kind of work. That's for me more fun. I also find
on shows that are big enough for me where I just don't have the time to do the design work, I find that when I talk to the various graphic artists, I could talk to them on a level so I can communicate what I want.
Yeah.
So even though there are plenty of times where things have to be built, I know when I talk to my people over at SAT, I have a way of conveying what I need manufactured, that even if I can't do it myself, whether it's because I don't have the tools or I just don't know how to take it to the extent that they can, at least I could talk the same language to them. And I think that's also, and that's part of being in the business for so long.
And it's part of that sort of that encyclopedia that we have to know is, we have to be able to become an expert on everything. I think I was talking to Greg Finnan years ago, a really accomplished property master, a wonderful guy who had a meeting early in his career with Greg Bilson Jr. at ISS. And he was sort of going over that, grips have to know 300 pieces of equipment, and they have to be able to work with them creatively and be able to, assemble them and just be fluent with them. And that's an accomplishment. And he said, this is what a prop master has to know. And he dropped a phone book.
Right.
It's everything we have to
right.
we have to be able to know. And we have to be able to teach ourselves things. But what's wonderful now with the internet, the way it is, like I'm only ever like 2 YouTube videos away from knowing how to do just about anything.
It's also your way of absorbing.
Yeah.
And your way of then portraying that you are expert on it. Because it's amazing how I can go into something with a totally blank slate, watch the 2 YouTube videos, and then be sitting down with a director, and the director's like, "Wow, Scott, thanks so much."
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that's important. And I don't think you're being a charlatan at all when you do that. If you've honestly learned what you need to learn from those 2 YouTube videos, and you can convey a confidence that you could then reproduce it, that's a talent in and of itself as well.
Yeah, you have to be able to pick it up fast.
Which does get back to what we were saying off air before we started about the imposter syndrome. Mm-hmm. And I think part of that for me, it kind of comes to having a little bit of anxiety as I approach the work, my love for it and wanting everybody to be happy with what I do. But then because I didn't major in prop mastering in college, there are times where I'm on a movie set and there's all this action happening around me and major movie stars around me. And people are coming to me for my advice or my input. And in my back of my head, I'm thinking, why would they be asking me this stuff?
Yeah.
It's like every show I do, I think this is going to be the show where they find out that I'm just Scott Buckwald of Poughkeepsie, New York, and I really don't know what's going on. I'm just kind of here.
Yeah. But that's the fun part.
Yeah.
It's sort of like when you're sitting in a chair and you're tipping back and you're relaxing and you got your lemonade and the chair is just about to tip over backwards and you catch yourself. Sometimes that's just where we live.
You're right.
In that moment.
But with that said, every article that I've ever read or edited for Prop Culture, I know Teresa and I, when we're going back and forth on putting the magazine together, there have been so many times where when I read like an article like yours in the upcoming, the same thing was happening with Shogun. I was reading it with a knot in my stomach because I was reading just how you're making nothing into something. And I can't just read it and enjoy it and going, wow, he's really impressive. He pulled it off. I keep thinking, if that was me.
I see. Yeah.
And as I'm reading
could I have done that show?
Right. And I keep internalizing it. And there are times where I'm reading it and I'm finding myself actually losing my breath. Like how in the world did they pull this off?
Yeah.
And they pulled it off because they're good at what they do. They're professional, and this is just what we do.
And we also, the people that don't stress themselves into a heart attack at the age of 50 are the ones that know that you don't eat a whale in one bite. It's right. You just you take the first bite, then you move forward with the next step, then you move forward with the next step, and even if you're making it up, which in a lot of ways, like the Avatar sequels were not what I was expecting when I took the job, because I thought, I've got captured down. I did Tintin, that was Spielberg and Peter Jackson, and it was a completely new system and new environment, and the fundamentals were the same, but man, I was worried that they were going to find out that I didn't belong there.
But the good thing, with that is you were trailblazing. So it wasn't like there was anybody else who would have known more about it than you did.
Well,
because
Andy
it was
Siegel
all new.
set up a lot for us, and
Okay.
I don't want to diminish his work at all, but it definitely changed when we got to the second movie, because Mr. Cameron wanted to do things with a lot more reality in the volume than he ever had before.
Sure.
So we were making up a lot of stuff as we went.
It is one of the joys of a prop master, and it's one of the things I try to avoid. I've been an avid moviegoer from the time I was a child. My mother and I were movie partners. My wife and I love going to the movies together. My son, who's in the business, as a starting out director now is a walking IMDb page. And every time I go to a movie, I really do my best just to be an audience member. I try not to figure out if a license plate is paper or plastic.
Yeah.
I try not to figure out when they're shooting weapons, are they firing blanks or is this all CGI? I really try to watch a movie to enjoy it.
Well, and if the movie's doing its job, you're not looking at the cheesecake box. It's just
Right.
part of it. You know, you're not seeing it. So here's a question: 15-year-old Scott Buckwald, what is his favorite movie?
Oh, 15-year-old? Planet of the Apes.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Okay.
My
I
son,
was just talking to somebody.
my
that
son
said
and
the
I
same
were just
thing.
talking about this. I think I was 8 years old, and this is the Charlton Heston, the original Planet of the Apes. The first Planet of the Apes movie, I didn't see it in theaters. I was too little. I was a baby. But when it first played as the CBS Friday night movies, we were over my grandparents' house in Brooklyn, in New York, and the adults were doing their thing, and I was sitting watching TV, loving the movie. And the end of the movie, when Charlton Heston realizes he was on Earth all along, and you see the Statue of Liberty, it blew me away to where it can still give me goosebumps today. And I remember actively thinking then, I want to be able to pull practical jokes on people like this. This is what I want to do, to be able to do something that leave people speechless.
All right, so here's what you and I have to do, and we're going to need a lot of money to do it. We get everybody a good Planet of the Apes costume, right? And when the Artemis crew gets back from their trip around the moon, everybody on the planet is wearing a Planet of the Apes costume. I think that would be
it's the way to go.
Wouldn't that be a genius practical joke?
At least wherever they splash down.
Yeah, just right around them, maybe.
Right.
Because they'll figure it out. No matter how good the
How about
prosthetics are.
yours? What was your 15-year-old movie that?
Oh, it's sort of been my go-to answer for so long that I'll just go to it again. But it would be Star Wars: A New Hope.
Okay.
I was 6 years old in a theater, and when that ship came overhead,
I saw that I was in 8th grade, so I'm a little older than you.
It was that was it.
Yep.
That was the pinnacle of existence, is sitting in a movie theater with the sound and the imagery and just that beautiful story. And you know, it's not a perfect movie, but it's pretty darn close.
Right.
You know, so I'd probably say that was what inspired me to walk this path. Probably if it hadn't been for that moment, I don't know that I would be
I
here.
remember that moment. I was in 8th grade, and it was a science class, and we did a field trip, and we went to the movies to see Star Wars. Mm-hmm. And the same thing, I remember sitting in a theater, and it was a big, big screen in upstate New York, and that opening scene where the ship just comes flying over you. And unlike the Jupiter 2 from Lost in Space or any kind of flying saucers, this had nooks and crannies in it. It looked like a World War II battleship flying in outer space.
Yeah.
And it brought me in on a perspective I had never seen before. And I could still recall that. Very influential.
Yeah, and the design, everything was just so staggering. And
Now, I know Mary-Kate and Ashley, It Takes Two. That's yours, Mikey, right? That's what got you into the business. Because I'm looking at the...
How'd you guess?
Well, I'm seeing the video box right behind you. It Takes Two with Mary-Kate.
Yeah.
So what's the one project, if you could have had it, but somebody else did it, that you would have loved to have done?
Well, I know you did a Planet of the Apes movie.
I assisted Doug Harlocker on Dawn of the Planet of the Apes.
I would love to, even if I can come in for a day as an assistant on a Planet of the Apes movie, I would like it because it would be a certain full circle feeling for me to be on an Apes set. For your question, is it films that have for projects that have happened while I'm in the business, or things that, like, I would have loved to have worked on Baa Black Sheep?
Right. Well, I didn't honestly think the question through that much. So
But
it's really just wide
I
open,
wasn't in the business. Things that have happened today that I would have loved to have been on. Private Ryan. Every time I see it, I'm in awe.
Magic, isn't it?
Of the work of that. I mean, my impulse answer would have definitely been any of the Planet of the Apes movies.
Yeah.
Simply because it really, really was what got me into the business. And it's a movie that I've loved. For my birthday several years ago, we were back in New York, and my sister and my wife rented out a movie theater, invited a whole bunch of my high school friends, like all of my best friends and family, and it was a surprise party for me.
Oh,
We
that's
go
awesome.
into this movie theater with the idea of of my sister wanting to show me a bunch of movie posters, whether or not I thought they were valuable. And as soon as I got in there, everybody kind of yelled surprise, and we did a screening of Planet of the Apes.
Oh, that's a good one. And that's a good ruse.
Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah. And it was great because I watched it with a bunch of high school friends. My family was there. There was maybe 20 of us watching this movie, and it was a blast.
Yeah.
And the movie I still hold on to it. I could still get that feeling. So yeah, if you do the next Planet of the Apes movie, you want to bring me on just for the day?
Absolutely.
How about yours? What's your...
I have no idea. Why are you asking me this question? No, man, if it's something that would have been contemporary to my career, I think the miniseries Masters of Air would have been a brilliant thing to work on because of... I mean, I just, that it's we were talking about our love for World War II aviation.
How about actors? What actors have you worked with over the years?
Wow.
That when you, because we work with celebrities of all different levels. Who have you worked with that when you shook their hand the first time you got a little starstruck?
That is a really good question, and I've had my share of really...
Of course.
I mean, I'm luckier than... I have no complaints over all of the amazing stuff I've been able to contribute to. The first one that pops to my mind is Sigourney Weaver.
Okay.
Who obviously in the Avatar
worked.
sequels was very heavily in there, and she's just such a powerhouse.
Yep.
And for somebody to step into Alien and really crush that role, it's a science fiction movie and the hero's a woman,
and it's become so signature.
Yeah. She is...
Now, the first time when you met her, did you walk up to her and introduce yourself, or did you have the second AD go, this is Brad, he'll be...
Oh, no, I did it myself.
Okay.
Because I think I actually had to tie her up with, bind her hands behind her back. And Mr. Cameron doesn't like to do things fake. So if somebody's tied up and they're struggling against their bonds, they're going to be tied up.
Right.
And, I'll bring the softest rope I can, but it's going to be tight, and there's
Right.
not much we can do about that.
See, he's in a unique position because he could require that and ask that.
Yeah.
A lot of lesser people of lesser stature would never be able to get away with that.
Yeah, and sometimes some of the actors are like, "I'll just hold it; it'll be fine." And you don't force it on them because it's not your decision. It's between the actor and the director. You're just the guy bringing the rope and tying the knot. But,
Sure.
But that was one where I was a little awestruck, and I would have to say, secondarily, probably the moment that I had the most awe in my career was way back to Muppets Tonight, when as a PA, it was my job to sit by the phone in the first read through. And I didn't know what Frank Oz looked like, and I didn't know what Dave Goelz looked like, and I didn't know what Jerry Nelson, Steve Whitmire, all these amazing puppeteers looked like. I know what they sounded like,
Right.
But I didn't know, and so I'm kind of just sitting around waiting for the lines to come up, and I'm like, oh, that's the guy that does Miss Piggy. That's Frank Oz. He did Yoda. Those moments were really cool.
See, it's so great. There's nothing that inspires me more for what we do than just to kind of see the happiness in your eyes, like talking about that stuff.
Oh, it's magic.
Because it is magic. And we live in this business. I mean, how many other businesses would people line up on the sidewalk to watch what we do?
Yeah.
There's not many that wherever we shoot, we're the center of the action. People,
even if you're actually working on a mayonnaise commercial, they'll probably still want to watch.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, we export a lot of dreams, and the Hollywood dream and the LA dream, and there's obviously it's not all sunshine and lemon drops and rainbows. It's hard work, and it's sometimes very dangerous work, and it costs a lot. In physically, we're moving a lot, we're carrying a lot. You can get injured on this job. In fact, I think we're not number one as far as dangerous jobs, but we're not number 100 either.
It's also a very unorthodox job. My wife and I, we met on a film set. So we've both lived a life of being out of town, being apart for weeks or months at a time. I think the most dangerous part is just it's a very dangerous lifestyle. I'm not comparing it as far as the severity of being in the military or the police force.
No, but even the forestry industry.
Right, but any kind of unorthodox job, it's not like we can't plan our vacation. We can't right now, like my sister, her and her husband will say, well, let's take the first week of August. I can't do that. Because if I'm working the first week of August, I can't sacrifice a job to go on a vacation.
Yeah, we buy a lot of refundable or changeable airfares.
Almost all of our vacations have always been 2 days in advance. It's like, let's go to New York, and we'll buy the tickets for tomorrow morning. First time we ever went on a cruise, we literally bought them on a Sunday night and left on a Monday morning.
Yeah, I just got back from a trip to New Orleans with my family. I got back yesterday, as a matter of fact, so maybe that's why I'm not making as much sense as I might later. But, I was there on a film, and that meant that my wife and, at that point, 1-year-old kid they got to see everything, and I got to see what was between the house I was renting and the studio. Right. That was the work. But we both wanted to come back and show that to the kids. But work being work, they had, there were 3 tickets that were locked in stone, and mine was something that could be changed.
Right.
Because we just have to be ready to say yes, especially after the last few years where a lot of people have been hurting for not having work.
Right. I know so many of my out-of-town jobs, how many times on a Friday night I would get the very last, I was working in Boston, and I got the very last flight out on a Friday night, flew overnight for my son's 9th birthday party that was starting at 10 in the morning in LA. To do the birthday party, get some sleep, have breakfast Sunday morning, then be back on a plane so that I could be on set at 5 in the morning on Monday. Yeah. And I never missed a school play, never missed a birthday party, made sure to always catch that.
Yeah. Well, those moments are important.
Right.
And this job asks a lot of us physically, certainly emotionally, and the roller coaster of the financial part of this job is difficult. It's hard to plan vacations, all of that, and when you involve a family and you want to be present, and therefore you really have to work at that and make sure you can do that.
Is your wife in the business?
No, my wife actually does the real work of the family, which is to take care of our 2 kids.
Okay.
And
my wife did the same thing. When our son was growing up, she was a stay-at-home. Yeah. But we had met on set, and now she's back in the business after my son graduated high school and he got into college. We didn't need to have the parent at home anymore.
But I'm sure that'll be our circumstance.
But I think for at least for the 2 of us, this is all we've ever done. I never made a midlife career change. I've been working film since college.
Well, you are a podcaster now.
Now I'm a podcaster.
Congratulations on finally hitting that pinnacle.
Right. But so the kind of work we do, I have nothing else to compare it to other than working at a shoe store in the mall when I was in college. Yeah. So other than that kind of retail work, this is all I've ever done, and this is all my son has ever seen. So all of this has always been very normal to us. Yeah. I'm sure my son felt, well, everybody's dad, gets to work, on a movie set, because he grew up in LA. He had other friends whose parents worked in the film business.
My oldest kid turned 3 and came to the set of the ABC Muppets. I'd known all these puppeteers and performers for a very long time at this point. And so Kermit the Frog sang Happy Birthday to my oldest kid. And that's just normal. Right. And, I'm very good friends with Leslie Carrera Rudolph, who is the puppeteer for Abby Cadabby on Sesame Street. Uh-huh. And so my daughter would get phone calls from Abby on her birthday. And they just, that's a normal for them.
Right. My son came to visit me on the set of A Mighty Wind, and he was a little boy at the time. And Catherine O'Hara had come up to the prop truck and go, "Oh, who is this?" My son was an adorable little kid, and she goes, "Do you know any of my movies?" And he had known her from Beetlejuice, mm-hmm. of course, and she picks him up and starts singing the Deo song to him.
Oh, that's so wonderful.
And it's just it's amazing memories. But again, that never happened to me when I was a little kid.
That doesn't happen to anybody.
Right.
We on Avatar: Way of the Water, we had we needed a bunch of kids, because there were reef kids that came out, and they were going to swarm a helicopter that landed and check it out, and they didn't want to put out a casting call. And I mean, the crew on that show, the stage crew wasn't huge, but if you take in all the lab and all the all the folks that are at the Brain Bar and everybody that's running the digital part of that, even just for the capture portion, it's a lot of folks. It's an army. And so instead of reaching out to casting directors for kids of a certain age, they just reached out to the crew. Like, hey, if you've got a kid and they're about, this age and whatever, and they're interested, bring them in. So my oldest, I think they were, oh my goodness, maybe 7, 8, 9. They're probably about 8 at the time, is in a capture suit in the volume, running around like a kid, and picks up a marker cover, which I could go into, but it's really weeds, and hands it to James Cameron, who was kind enough to just, get down on a knee and say, "Oh, thank you very much for that. I really appreciate that you brought that to me," and puts it in the pocket. And like, that's an interaction. I don't even know if they'll remember that, but I certainly do.
When my son was, I'm going to guess he was 6 or 7, I was doing a movie called Alex and Emma that Rob Reiner had directed, who was a wonderful, wonderful guy. It was just so heartbreaking when I heard, but he was so beyond sweet to my son. And he asked my son he asked me if my son wanted to be in the movie, because he has a very old world European look to him. Mm-hmm. So he played the little orphan shoeshine boy. So when it's a period movie, it takes place in the 20s. So as everyone is getting off the ferry, he's sitting there shining shoes.
Oh, what a treat.
So he walks up to Rob Reiner, because he had come up to me and he goes, "Dad, what's my character name?" And I was like, "Well, Theo, I don't know." I go, "Why don't you go ask Rob Reiner?" And he walks up to Rob Reiner. He goes, "Mr. Reiner." And Rob looks down at him. He goes, "What's my character name?" And Rob is like, he felt like a relative. He felt like your uncle. He looks down at my son with this big smile. He goes, Your name is Gary. Gary the orphan shoeshine boy." And my son was like, "Thank you very much."
Now he's got the anchor into the character.
And now he's got the anchor into the character.
Yeah. My daughter is actually really into plays right now, and she's the actor of the family. And
how old?
She is just about to turn 11.
Okay.
But all through, all the plays in middle school and everything, and she's there's a picture of myself and my oldest in a capture suit on the set of Avatar 2, and my daughter's like, "When is it my turn?" And I got Abbott Elementary, and she's like, "Oh, well, that's an elementary school. I'm in elementary school. Can I be on that show?" And I'm like, "Well, honey, it's inner city Philadelphia, and unfortunately, like, this is a show that did a joke where there was, I don't know what it was. There was a golf course nearby. It wasn't my season, but they brought in a bunch of white kids basically to populate the hallways. And the principal, Ava, walks around a corner and sees one of them and says, "Ooh, a ghost!" And so it's not quite the right demographic, but I know she's looking out for her turn.
Of course. But it's great. I mean, it's just amazing memories.
Yeah, this industry, it takes a lot, but it also gives
a lot.
Back. It really does.
You really need, unless you're going to go through either your own personal therapy or see somebody professionally, you do have to know what you're getting yourself into.
Yeah.
I think I was a strong enough person as an individual that I was able to handle this, because, like I said, I don't want to say I didn't have support from my family. They weren't against me doing it, but they never knew what to say. They had no understanding of this. If I was stressing out because I hadn't worked in a couple months, their response, my mother was always like, "Well, why don't you go to law school? And then at least you have that to fall back on."
Yeah.
And that was not what I wanted to do. Where I find, as my son pursues a film career, he's had a lot more support from my wife and myself.
Okay.
We've been able to tell him that, every time he gets a little bit of a nibble, just keep in mind it could just disappear. That he's a lot more prepared than I was.
So here's the question is, especially because, with your son starting in this industry right now, how old?
He's 29.
Okay. What's the advice for somebody, especially in the Los Angeles area, who wants to get into the film business right now? I mean,
he's producing, writing, and directing, and he's been working at it. I mean, he's sold his first screenplay. My advice to him has always been, save every penny. Save the money so that you don't have to go get a job at Home Depot. You don't have to do something to pay the rent.
Yeah.
I said, don't live up to the money you're making. Save your money and pursue what you want to do, and enjoy your life. But at the same point, if you have a week where all of a sudden you make $5,000, don't go out and spend $4,500 of it. Because I know that's the one thing that has saved me through various strikes over the years.
Yeah.
That I've never, worrying about paying the mortgage has only been a concern in as much as we can't go crazy, but I'm not worried about losing the house right away.
Right.
And that there's, we're living in a new world now. I mean, I used to work job to job to job.
Yeah.
To where now if we can get, 1 or 2 big shows a year, that's it.
That's what you're getting.
I'm also lucky now that what we need to make our expenses is a lot less because our son is on his own.
Yeah.
I also told him every project can't be your career-defining project, that you're going to work on projects that are going to get pulled out from under you, that it's the whole, it's a crazy business kind of thing. And I said sometimes the pursuit to the top will take longer. I said, if you look at your friends who went to business school, right out of college, they got a job working at a financial institution and they're getting their bonuses and their life is a little more Mr. and Mrs. America. I said, yours is not going to be that. I said, you might not hit it big at all, or you might do a way where you're making a comfortable living, but it might not happen until you're 35. But ultimately, if this is what you love and what you want to do, that should always be what your first concern is. Could you, like you asked me, could I imagine doing anything else? And, even now, I don't want to retire. I can't imagine retiring and just not doing this anymore. I still have a blast on set.
Good. It's a tricky one. If I'm going to answer my own question, I'm going to talk about how maybe, in the 80s and the 90s, and I wasn't really here for that. I got to town mid 90s and didn't know what I was doing, or really didn't have a finger on the pulse of the industry at all.
What year did you?
95.
Okay, and I was here. I got here in 91, so same generation.
And back then it was, you'd see the big movies coming out, and the ones that you wanted to work on, all the really cool stuff. Those property masters were in their 30s.
Right.
And I look now at the generation, because, we're in our mid to late 50s, that is coming behind us, and folks that are, 40, 42, 45 are still not able to break into the big cool stuff.
And I think that's
often.
also because of the odds of opportunity.
Yeah, there's just less going on.
I mean, up until COVID, I don't think a week went by where I didn't get a call. I mean, I was always turning stuff down.
Yeah.
And I look at my career in the 90s, and I was just getting more offers than I knew what to do with.
Yeah. Good times.
So it was an amazing time, and we really lucked out, which doesn't mean it's not good times now. It's just a different set of rules, and there are going to be successful prop masters, and your expectations have to be somewhat in tune with what the world is, so that if you're 40 and you're not working on a big movie, but you're working, and to me, this is a wonderful business. And if you could be working in this business and you're enjoying it, the scope of the film or the project should really be secondary.
Yeah.
To a degree, as long as you're making a reasonable living and you could survive on it. I just think things are turning around faster. Also, LA does not have the same buffet that it once had.
Well, and that's why I think people have to wait longer,
right,
to satisfy the ambitions that they have. And I'm talking about I loved Star Wars, right? That was just the thing, and the fact that I got to do the Kenobi series,
right,
was just like a nice little reward for that 6-year-old.
Right. Well, that's why I was saying the Planet of the Apes thing for me would be the same thing.
But you have to just wait so long to get there now. Whereas, I was able to start out in my mid-20s building in the Muppet Workshop. I don't see that kind of rapid expansion and
no.
I don't see that happening for folks anymore. And
no,
so
it's
for the younger generations coming in. I caution them.
They have to be realistic to the situation. The same thing when we got into the business, it wasn't the studio system where you would show up at Warner Brothers, you would punch your time card, and you would look at a wall and it would say, okay, well, Brad, today you're working on Gunsmoke.
Yeah.
And it's not that anymore either. It's almost, how lucky was it? I was thinking, I told you earlier, I had been doing features and I just opted to start doing more television because I wanted to stay home, that I was able to take that career change upon myself. That's like, all right, I'm going to start doing some bigger TV because that's what I wanted to do, that I had that choice.
Yeah.
Right now, you don't have that choice. Whoever the first person is who calls, that's the job you take.
That's the job you take.
Those are the new rules, and that's fine.
That's where I come back to talking to the folks that are, like just 18, 19. Do I go to college? Do I just get a job in the film industry, start being a PA on music videos or whatever it is? It's a slower path now, and there are so many qualified and talented property masters who are assisting people and should by all rights be doing their own big shows, and there isn't enough volume for the folks that are out there right now.
Sure.
I did my first music video a year, 2 years ago, and my first thought is like, well, I'm not a music video person. Like, who did I displace? Like who has that career who would be here if I wasn't? And I definitely have I always think about the folks that are really struggling to get anything right now, and it's tough.
It is, but again, all I could say to that is it's the conditions that exist, and it doesn't matter whether it's right or wrong or good or bad. I mean, it's certainly it's not good compared to what it was like in the early 2000s, but those days are gone. And you could find the reasons for them and understand why it is the way it is, but it's still this way.
And it's not peak TV like COVID time when everybody was working and you'd have assistants going out and buying their trailers, and I'm a prop master now and I'll never go backwards. And then all of a sudden the rug is pulled out and you've got a payment on a trailer that's never making any money. And it's
right. So what's going to happen is it's going to weed through it. Even when I was PAing in New York, I remember working in, on rooftops in New Jersey, and it's 10 below zero, and it's snowing, and it's miserably cold, and you're soaking wet, and there were plenty of people who just said F this, and they never looked back. And I persevered through it. You persevered through it. Mikey persevered through it. We all have, and that's it. It's just a new set of rules, and it's how you choose to play it.
And the people who stay will be the people who are here to do the jobs.
There's gonna be far less production in LA, but at the same point, there's going to be far less people looking to do it.
Yeah.
So I think that weeding out process is going to take a heavy toll, and it's going to separate the haves from the have-nots, and things will start to kind of even out a little bit.
Yeah. And you like myself spent a lot of time in the probably mid to late 90s and early 2000s going on location to shoot not the location, but to shoot on a stage because it was cheaper.
Yeah.
And we are guilty. Our generation, I think, is and we had to say yes to the jobs, but we're sort of guilty for going all over the world and training our own replacements.
Yeah, but there's a certain I can't think of the right term, but there's a certain half-life to everything that you do, and you can't, even if at the time you knew what you were kind of propagating, it wouldn't prevent you from doing it. It's the business is constantly evolving.
Yeah.
And LA has been the center of the film business from the 1920s until now. So it's very possible that 30 years from now, people will look at LA the way we look at Detroit. Detroit is not part of the auto industry anymore. I mean, there's executive offices there, but it's not Detroit from the 50s or 60s.
No.
It's evolved into something else. And that's what's happening to the film business.
Yeah.
There's a lot of reasons for it. There's a lot of things I think the population, the non-film workers, the citizens of California need to understand when we're asking for various bond issues and various rebates that it's helping them as well. That if you're a dentist, chances are most of your bills are being paid by motion picture insurance. So if we leave, you're going to leave.
Yeah.
And I think too many people think that when the film business is asking for rebates, it's always like, oh, we're just giving the rich movie people more money. And that's not the case.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, think about how much food we purchase for our catering tents for breakfast and lunch. And
how many
much,
pizzas does
much
craft
lumber,
service get?
How much wood do we buy from Topanga Lumber or Home Depot or all those places where the construction folks, how much I was on Warner Brothers for 8 months with a show, and every day there would be a truck from Industrial Metal Supply pulling up to the welding shop.
Right.
And
so go ask the people at Industrial Metal, do they support rebates for the film industry?
Yeah.
Because I listen to talk radio and I hear people call and go, well, why don't I get a rebate? How come, my business isn't getting a rebate?
Why is my industry getting subsidized?
Right. But at the same point, whenever you hear in certain towns or cities that a football team might leave, or a military base might close down, or a prison might leave, they're panicking.
Yeah.
We have been here for so long that people don't realize how much money we really do put into a population. And I think they're going to start seeing it now. I had my car dealer call me up over the summer saying, well, Mr. Buckwald, you've had your car now for 5 years. You ready for another one? And I actually said to him, I go, not until the film business improves.
Yeah.
And I even, I said, I go, when you hear the ballot measure to give rebates to the film business, this is why. Because how many of your customers cannot buy a new car now?
Yeah, are waiting another 2, 3, 4 years, get a little more out of it.
Right.
How many bathrooms aren't getting renovated?
Exactly.
I would, there's work I'd love to do on my house.
My wife and I, we talk
steady,
about that all the time.
Yeah.
There's all this stuff we want to do. And in fact, it is a bathroom renovation that we've been looking at. And it's always like...
Nailed it!
It's like we have the money in the bank right now, but our big concern is if we take $50,000 out to do a nice renovation on a bathroom, what's going to happen 6 months after that if I haven't worked?
Well, you'll be using the bathroom in glory.
In glory.
Yeah.
Yes. So I think that's what people are just going to have to look into. It's a new business.
Yeah.
And it'll be a new normal to a lot of people. I think it is scary though, because it's a business I love. And, it's not even that the business is now leaving to New Mexico or to Atlanta. It's leaving to Canada. It's leaving to, countries in Eastern Europe and in Spain. So I do have a problem when I hear a movie that takes place in Los Angeles is being shot in New Zealand.
Yeah.
And I wonder, why couldn't the actors have said, you know what, we're shooting here. The new, there's a reboot of Malcolm in the Middle coming out. I think it comes out next Friday. Shot at CBS Radford originally.
Yeah.
Shot in the Valley. Whole movie shot in Canada now.
Yeah.
Why wasn't that shot here? And
well, there's a real easy reason for that. Is because it's cheaper to shoot up there because they don't have to cover health and pension.
And why can't it be made cheaper? See, that's if we want the film business to even stay in this country, we need to be competitive, which is a whole nother issue where, and this is probably a topic for a show unto itself, but should the IA be international? Can they say...
Well, it is the first letter, so it kind of has to be.
Right.
Right now, anyway.
Right. So unless they want to spend the money on new
just
station.
Think about all the T-shirts they'd have to remake.
Yeah, you're right.
It's a lot of work.
All right, next subject.
But no, you're right. It is a big deal. So, and maybe that is for next time.
Yeah.
But for now, we just got the twirly finger from our producer, which means we got to wrap up.
Right.
But it's absolutely been a pleasure. And
so from Prop Talk, I'm Scott.
There you go. And Brad, and thanks for listening to us fumble through our first interview where we interviewed nobody but each other. We've got some really talented people coming up next, and so stay with us
and if you missed this show, listen to the next two.
Yeah. we'll get some notes.
Right.
Out.
Yeah, thank you guys for stepping in for us. I'll read through this big whatever spiel. Thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Prop Talk, the official podcast of the Property Masters Guild, brought to you by real working and retired prop masters. If this is your first time listening, please make sure to like and subscribe and comment wherever you're hearing this. If you would like to know more information on the Property Masters Guild or have any questions for us here at Prop Talk, be sure to go to propertymastersguild.org. We're also on Instagram @_the PMG and all other socials. Until next time. Yeah, it's great. Perfect. Yeah, you guys